Good day, Junior Tuckies. Today I'm going to be teaching you about the characteristics of a play. What is a tragic hero? Simply put, a tragic hero is the protagonist of a drama who is perfect in all the different ways, but one. He has a tragic flaw. This comes from Aristotle's 5 traits of a tragic hero. The first trait is that the character usually comes from a higher position in life, may it be an officer in an army or a prince. Number 2, they always have a tragic flaw, something that leads to their absolute downfall. 3, there is a reversal of fortune for the hero, so sometimes they are able to redeem themselves. Number 4, the hero recognizes their mistake. They've realized what their fatal flaw has caused them to do. And then 5, Number 5, the hero then pities themselves and fears the consequences to come. This usually, and especially in Shakespearean dramas, led to suicide. Examples of tragic heroes then and now. The first picture is of Mike Tyson, a world-famous boxer and respected all over the world. His fatal flaw was his aggression, although he needed it for his sport. He was accused and found guilty of beating his wife in the 1990s, and he also once bit off an opponent's ear during a boxing match. The second picture is close to home, Oscar Pistorius, the world-famous Paralympian. Many people looked up to him, especially people from the disabled community. He killed his girlfriend on Valentine's Day in 2013. His fatal flaw, depending on who you speak to, was either jealousy or that he made a grave error in judgment. Now let's look at some Shakespearean classic tragic heroes. Firstly is Hamlet, his fatal flaw being Othello, his fatal flaw being absolute jealousy that drives him to kill his beloved. And then Macbeth, his fatal flaw being ambition, which led him into madness. What is a hamartia? Hamartia is the Greek word for a fatal flaw, or the error in judgment that will lead to the hero's downfall. You'll see over here I added 2 pictures. Everything happens for a reason, and sometimes that reason's because you're stupid and you make bad decisions. We often feel like that when we see our characters in our novels or in our plays. We always question, why could you not just speak to your wife, or why could you have not believed that tale? Then you'll see another words from Hamartia: the tragic flaw, a weak point, falling point, flaw, fault, fault flaw, defect, blemish, imperfection, or deficiency. Let's look at some Hamartia in popular culture. Firstly, we have Frodo Baggins, a character from Lord of the Rings. His fatal flaw was being greedy. Then next up we have Achilles, the famous Greek tragic hero. His fatal flaw was physical, and that is why we call the part of our body at the bottom of our feet the Achilles heel. His Achilles was torn and therefore led to his death. Next up we have Harvey Dent from the Dark Knight Batman series. His fatal flaw was pride. Then we have Million Dollar Baby. Her fatal flaw was her ambition. And lastly, we have The Great Gatsby from F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel. His fatal flaw being ambition and not being able to let go of the past. What is foreshadowing? Foreshadowing is a literary device that gives us a hint or a clue of what's going to happen later on in our novel or in our play. It's able to create suspense, curiosity, and definitely draws the attention of the reader. Usually, it doesn't explicitly reveal the upcoming events. We can see it in dialogue, in setting, and often in the atmosphere. If it's used correctly, the reader won't even know that it's coming up right up until the end of your play or novel. These are different examples of where you can find foreshadowing in a play or novel. Firstly is dialogue. It could be in a joke, a comment, or even an image that reveals what happens later on in the play. For example, in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Romeo says, "My life were better ended by their hate than their death, progrewed wanting of thy love." These lines foreshadow Romeo's eventual fate, committing suicide after the loss of Juliet. Number 2, sometimes we can even see it in the title. The title of the novel or short story can foreshadow major events as well. For example, in Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, foreshadows not just the destruction of the physical house, but the demise, the crushing of an entire family. Then we get setting. The setting can also describe the atmosphere or the weather in the story. For example, in Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, he actually uses descriptions of the weather to foreshadow a dark turn in Pip's story. We can read, so furious had been the gusts that high buildings in town had had the lead stripped off their roof, and in the country trees had been torn up, and sails of windmills carried away, and gloomy accounts had come in the cast of shipwreck and death. By reading that, we know something's coming up, and it's definitely not going to be good. Then we use a metaphor or a simile. Remember, figurative language always helps in creating foreshadowing tools. It helps the reader understand what may come further on in the novel without really giving away the story. And then lastly, the character traits. A character's appearance, attire, or even their mannerisms can foreshadow what will come later on in a play. For example, in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, J.K. Rowling makes a point of describing Professor Quirrell's turban and noting Harry's curiosity about it. Later on, we understand why Harry was so interested, and that was because Professor Quirrell's turban concealed the evil Lord Voldemort. What is dramatic irony? This is when the reader or the audience usually knows something about the play, about the setting, about the plot, and the characters on stage or in your novel do not know whatsoever. The characters' actions have been given different meanings for the audience than they actually do for the actors or the characters in your book. We often see this in tragic novels and plays. Shakespeare was also one of the greats to do this. Often in a Shakespearean tragedy, the audience always knew what would be the outcome, some tragedy. However, the actual actors on stage or the characters on stage never knew what was going to hit them. I want you to have a look at the first picture of the shark. This was the poster for the movie Jaws. We, as the audience, know that the woman is in grave danger. However, she thinks she's just having a leisurely swim. That's dramatic irony. Then, in the second picture, we can see how the ducks are innocently walking across the road, while the driver and the passenger in the car can see a snake ready to eat the next duckling. We know something that the ducks do not. Once again, dramatic irony. Alright, Junior Tuckies, I hope this lesson helped you out. Next up is the analysis of a play.